Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Today I've got one of the most popular of the World Tour speakers with me. Oh, and I need to turn off my my YouTube audio feed so I'm getting it echoed back to me. Gil Raviv. So Gil actually went out and offered and said, "Hey, I'd love to do a webinar, Chuck, and I was going to cover some of the most advanced topics for Power BI, and we're going to go out and take a look at it from a data set of Star Wars." So Gil, why don't you go ahead and start your screen share?
Hi guys.
It looks great. I can see it. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what we're going to walk through, yourself, and the company that lets you do these crazy things for us?
Sure. Thank you, Chuck, very much for having me today. And hi, everyone. I'm really excited for doing this session today with you. Today, we are going to go over some very cool data set for demos, for learning purposes. And the idea is to just walk through some of the cool features that are, in my opinion, relatively advanced, to let you know about them, to appreciate all those wonderful powers that you have as part of Power BI. Let's start with a very quick introduction about myself. So again, Gil Raviv. I am a Microsoft MVP specializing in Power BI. Work also in Avanade in very, very interesting and exciting and cool projects working with business and IT in the Midwest in US. I'm also a blogger in datachant.com. And in 3 months' time, I should also finish a book about Power Query inside Power BI and Excel, also known as Get Data in Excel. A very interesting book about the data preparation scenarios and challenges. Um, in my past, I was part of the Microsoft Excel team working on the integrations of Power BI inside Excel, and it's really was fortunate enough to be in a position to help such great people to deliver the Power BI functionalities inside Excel 2016. A bit about my company that was happy and allows me to do the things that I do to the community as well. So in Avanade, we are doing a lot of analytics projects and helping companies to transform their data culture into the new modern business intelligence capabilities. We start with self-service BI project, but quite often with all the amazing ecosystem of Azure and the advanced analytics and machine learning and Cortana, there is so many things which are really exciting. And from Power BI perspective, the idea that you can use Power BI not just for the traditional reporting challenges that you may have, but to use it as a remarkable prototyping tool to achieve anything that is around analytics, and to start from day one or from week one of a project, to start with the insights and only then gradually scale up to the architecture that is needed and to larger data sets and to more effective automation of the workloads. But the idea that you can start with Power BI in the front end, do all the nice and magical preparations and modeling, and then extend the offering, this is really something remarkable for any Power BI consultant. And this is also one of the reasons that I really wanted to talk about the powers in Power BI. And usually when I meet clients, the initial perception is that Power BI is just a great visualization layer on top of existing infrastructure around data warehouses, etc. But the idea of what I would like to share with you today as part of this demo is that all of us are not just those Jedi's that hold the lightsabers. The Force is much bigger than the visualization, than the lightsaber, than the dueling part. And we have so many different capabilities, like the modeling, DAX, the data preparation and transformation using Power Query and M, and lots of many other pieces of the ecosystem, like the ability to use Power Apps, the ecosystem with Azure through different elements like text analytics and Cortana, the ability to use R both on the query editor as part of the data preparation and also as custom visuals, and lots of other goodies that Power BI provides allows us to be really very powerful in our capability to offer new insights to organizations. So that's about what we are going to do today, to show you where your forces as a Jedi beyond just the visualization, and specifically we are going to focus on 5 different elements. So again, since our theme today is Star Wars, we will take Star Wars data sets and show how we can do lots of very nice scenarios around data preparation, the reuse of our work through the query editor. We will then do some calculations of Star Wars characters using their mass and height to calculate BMI. For those of you who are familiar with calculated columns in DAX and in the Power BI modeling part, you will see that there are other ways, additional ways to compute relatively complex calculations. We will then do some what-if scenarios, and we will later on show you cool things that you can use by applying a Cartesian product, and we will explain more in a second. Okay, before I begin the demo, and today everything is around demo, I'm not going to present any more decks. Just wanted to let you know, if you will go to my blog, datachant.com, just click now datachant.com, you will find in my first article for today a PBIX file. This PBIX file is the one that we are now today going to prepare on the fly. So if you will not be able to follow all my steps, that's fine. You can just download the PBIX file and you can see everything that we are going to do today. Hopefully we'll have time to do everything. If we will not, at least you will have the PBIX file to go over all the steps. And feel free to send me questions by email, through Twitter, or by comments on the blog post itself. Are you ready? Let's start. Excellent. Okay, so our first point is to go and show you some, when I started thinking about what should I do with Star Wars, I thought, oh, perhaps there is some Star Wars API. So Star Wars API, if you will just Google for Star Wars API, you can see that the first page is a page called SWAPI, Star Wars API. I also published a few blog posts around this API in the past, specifically sharing some cool data preparation patterns and also row-level security. I will share the links after this session as well. So you can see in this specific API, just as an example, I can go and use Web REST API to get data about Star Wars. For example, this specific link that I will click now will show you in the browser 87 different Star Wars characters that I can now load using a Web REST API. So and you see that we have also pages. So the 87 characters are divided across multiple pages in a JSON format, if you're familiar with the JSON format. If you're not familiar, that is fine. You don't really need to understand this format. But just as you see, when I click on this URL, I get to the second page now with additional Star Wars characters. So now, moving back to the first page, you can see this is the URL that I can use. And I can open now a blank new Power BI desktop. And by the way, I really recommend, if you are an intermediate user of Power BI, this is not your first time doing some advanced stuff in Power BI, feel free just to go over the steps together with me. So we are opening a blank Power BI desktop, and we will use the Get Data button and select the web option, the web connector. Web connector is a really powerful tool, allows you to do many interesting web REST API scenarios to implement them, not just collecting some tables from Wikipedia, which by the way, we will also do later today. So I just pasted the Swappy URL here inside with page equal 1. And I'm clicking on this dialog now. Let's see what happens. If you do it for the first time, you may also have the web access dialog. Select the anonymous option because there is no credentials, no authentication to the page. This is just a public page. So just select the anonymous and you will go to this specific view. And you can see this is the JSON data that was available through the REST API. Now we have it as a record. But actually what we want is to get the results themselves. So I can just click on the list element here. And now I have a list of 10 records. Each one of these records you can see here at the bottom. So record number 1 is Luke Skywalker with lots of information around his character. The second one is C3PO, just as an example. So now, instead of just browsing each one of those, we can just, as you see here in the list tool transform, we have a button to table. I'm clicking on this button here. And I'm just selecting the default options. It doesn't really important. And let's click OK. And now we just turn, as you see on the right side, in the navigation step, it was a list, and we just turn it into a single column table. Very, very straightforward. But now, as a table, Power Query or Query Editor in Power BI allows us to expand those records into a table. So I will select the Expand button, and let's just select which fields we would like to have. You know what? Let's bring them all together. So I'm clicking OK. And these are, you see, we have 10 Star Wars characters with lots of information around their height, mass, color, skin color, hair color, eye color, the year of the birth, gender, and many different other elements. For now, just to be more in the focus of the scenarios that we would like to have, let's just bring some physical attributes. So I'm selecting the choose column, and I will just bring to the table the name, height, mass, gender, and perhaps also species, and click OK. So we have this information with us. We are, let's see. So for example, with species, you see that we just have the data in a list, even though each one of those attributes is only a single item, because each character can only be of one species. This is probably the design, the JSON format used just a list, but it wasn't very critical. So for us, let's just expand the list. So I'm clicking again on the expand here, and I will select the first option to expand the data into rows. Since we have only single item each list, the expansion will not create any impact on the number of rows in our table. Okay, so now we have some URLs. Each one of them is for a species ID. Just to show you some very cool features that we have in Power BI, let's try to extract the ID number instead of just the long URL. Let's have a species ID number. So a very cool feature which is not advanced, but it's so cool, so I had to show it to you, is the column from examples. So just as an example, if I will select here the second option to create a custom column from the selection. The selection is the species column that we selected earlier. Now you can see I have on the right another column. Let's call this column species ID. And now all I need to do is start to use examples, to enter the examples of what I would like to have in this column. I don't need to know to be very acquainted with all the different user interface elements on the ribbons of the query editor. I just need to type here the example. For example, if I will just type 1 and click enter, you see this is really magic. The logic around the query editor allows us now to guess that when I selected 1, probably I just wanted to split the information and extract the numbers between the slashes. And you can see I can just test that everything looks okay, which it is. And also, if I am an advanced Power BI practitioner and I know a bit about M, I can also learn the specific M function that was used here. So there is text between delimiters, and it's another opportunity for you in the future if you will have more advanced scenarios of data preparations where the columns, for example, will not be sufficient. You know that there is a capability in M to write code that allows you to extract data between delimiters as we did here. Let's just click OK. And you see that we have the species ID as we expected. We can now remove the species. We don't need it anymore, right? Another interesting thing that we can do in terms of data cleanup, you see that we have some droids here, like C3PO and R2D2, and the gender is not applicable. Let's just change it from not applicable to droid, just for simplicity, because we will have later on in the exercise some what if calculations that are just related to droids. So I'm replacing not applicable with droid. Okay. And now I have the page. Let's rename the query to a single page. Now the challenge is that we don't want just the first 10 records, right? And this is probably where lots of people are using the web connector in Power BI to get data, but when they stumble upon the first challenge where they need actually to paginate all the other pages, this becomes a bit more challenging. Now, there is a basic scenario to do that. If you are a basic query editor practitioner, you will probably just go create a duplicate now. So you have a second page, and you will go to the source and just change page 1 to page 2. So now you see, we have Anakin as the first character on the second page, and we have Luke Skywalker as the character on the first page. But this is not really, it will not scale up. Right now, you will need to duplicate these queries many times and then to append them together. It's not a Jedi-ish way to do things in Power BI. So let's learn what we can do in query editor to allow us to do something much more interesting. So I'm deleting the second page. Okay, so we have this first page. So our first challenge is to build a table for all the page numbers. And then we will use that table to populate all the pages, right? So to do that, one of the easiest ways is just to go and using the new query, I can select a blank query. And now I would like just to have numbers, let's say numbers between 1 to, let's just type 20. Remember, we had 87, I think, characters. So actually, we would need nine pages, right? And we can now change this list to a table. Let's call column 1 page number. Sorry for the typo. Page number. And now we have the numbers that we can use, and somehow if we will be able to feed the single page with a parameter to this specific query, we will be able to get all the data. Now, let's even be more sophisticated here. You know, tomorrow Disney will publish a new film for Star Wars, and we would like perhaps in the data sets to be able, when you refresh the report, to get the new data without making any changes in the query, right? So wouldn't it be cool that when we created this list, instead of having the static number 9 to change this number into the dynamic number of the number of pages that we would like? So let's do that. So I'm going, remember in a single page, when we started the first step, I'm clicking on the source. You see, this is the first step that we have. We have the count of the characters. So I'm just right clicking on 87. You see, right click, and I will select add as new query. Immediately you see another query that just return a number with 87. And that's what we just need. Let's change this one to people count. So this is our query, a query that just start the same way as single page and retrieves the number of characters. Now, if I will go back to query 1, and let's change the name to people. So these are all the people in Star Wars, all the characters that we have in Star Wars. And now I will go again to step 1, and you see instead of 1 to 9, I can just rewrite this specific function formula to be more dynamic. And this is the way we can do that. I'm using M, and I'm using the function numbers as part of the list family of functions. And we are going to generate the numbers starting from number 1 till people count. People count will return 87. So, and we have 10 pages for 10 characters for each page. So let's just divide it by 10. And you see that this specific function also return 9 pages instead of having the 9 statically inside the code. So now if we will go again to people, to the last step, in people you see that we have 1 to 9. Dynamically, next time we have a new Star Wars movie, everything will just get updated for us. Now the challenge is to go to single page and transform it into a function. Let's do that. So the first thing for us is to understand what is unique in this set of steps that we can generalize. And that is exactly what we had in the first step. In source, remember, we used page 1. So to change page 1 to something more dynamic, we are going now back to the queries pane, and we will select a new parameter. By the way, you can also go to Home ribbon and do that from the Manage Parameters drop-down option.
Hey, Gil, we didn't talk about when you wanted to do Q&A. When is a good time? Andres has got a great question on an area that you're breaking into right now. So his question is, are you going to talk about making this web data set or this web source refreshable? And he didn't ask this, but I know that this actually what you're playing with right now is a very slippery slope into making them not refreshable. Can you talk about making this data set refreshable and the caveats of these parameters and you appending things like this?
Yeah, it's a great question. I can tell you for sure that there are some scenarios where when you use parameters and functions, sometimes things will not be refreshable. There are ways to change the queries to make them refreshable, and I also think in terms of us as the community, anything that is not refreshable, we should just raise an idea and tell Chuck and people in the team in Power BI to work on refreshable scenarios because to tell you the truth, it's so important to be able to write reusable code and to have very efficient transformations. By the way, I think that the time to do a manual refresh is much more shorter than to have a very bad queries that are not reusable. To maintain them and to extend them will take much more time. So I think that you shouldn't give up on very effective queries. There are ways
I have to agree. I look at some of my reports and you just look at, oh my God, I'm really merging all of those tables again and again and again because of exactly what you talked about from your very first demo.
Yes.
Sorry to interruption.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So each time there are different ways where you write the queries and the refresh doesn't work, and there are ways to improve that. It's more like an art than very methodological processes at this stage, because we don't have enough clarity about how the engine specifically works. Usually the problem comes around the privacy related restrictions that are not calculated in a very correct manner when you have complex calculations and queries. So it's really up to, on an ad hoc basis, to do things differently. Just as an example, one day I found out that if you just use text.from to convert numbers to text, the specific function just created all the mess. Or one time, instead of a parameter to use to convert a parameter back into a query that will just return the value, and suddenly it worked for me. So I don't have enough information to give a very concise best practices in this area. But if you have any specific scenario that you can share, perhaps we can do something together and can even blog about the solution. Okay, so back, as you recall, we started to write here a parameter. Let's call this one page number. And this one is a text, because we will concatenate the page number to the URL. And let's use current value equal 1. Now, when we have this page number here, we can go back to the single page, to the source step, and just change the URL here. Instead of returning 1 in a static manner, we will just concatenate the page number. You see that after I pressed enter, I have the same result. So the single page now works with the parameter instead of a static number. Now, for those of you who are really advanced, we can do everything also here in the advanced editor. This is where we have all the M functions, all the M formulas translated into a single expression, a pipeline of transformation. And for those of you who are experts, you're familiar with specifically with this specific format. So by adding this line, now, I will be able to convert the page number into a function. But let's just not do that now, because if we have here in the session some audience that is not feeling very secure with using M, the good news is that you can still be a great Jedi and to fight for the battle of insight without the need to open the advanced editor. And let me show you how you do that. So we have the single page, and we fix the source to concatenate the page number in a dynamic way. And now all we need to do is right-click on the single page query and convert it into a function. You see, create function option. And now let's call a name. Let's call this one fn get people by page. And you see here I have 3 new artifacts created for me. One is a function, another one is the parameter that we used earlier, and the single page. By the way, at this stage, if the schedule refresh will not work, you can also try to convert back the parameter into a query. Perhaps this single step may do some magic and the schedule refresh will work, but I'm not 100% sure about the changes that will need to happen for schedule refresh to work for you. Perhaps everything that we do today will just work as well, and I will promise to check it out when we finish this session. So now we have the single page here, and if we will go to people, we can now use this function. So in the people query, when we just add the numbers of the pages, I can now go to add column, click on the invoke custom function option, and in the function query drop-down menu, I will select the function that we just created earlier. And I will, in the page number, I will just need to select the page number here and click OK. By the way, I need to convert, yeah, there is error here, so just something that I forgot to do before I invoked the custom function. We need to change the type to text. Okay, now when it is a text, we will go to the invoke function again, and you see that we have tables. Each one of these tables are the pages, the different pages that we add. Now, something very interesting to know. So just as an example, in page 9, you see in page 9, we have BB8. And BB8 as a droid, its gender is none. However, if you remember, we already identified some robots, some droids, that their gender was recognized as N/A, not applicable. So let's also fix the none into droid, and we can do it in two ways. We can either do it in a minute here on this query, but just to show you something very interesting, here in the single page, remember, we started with a single page. Now this specific query turned into a kind of a sample query that you can use. You can apply all kinds of changes here on a single page, and this will be propagated into the function and will be applied on all the people. So just as an example, if I will now go to the gender and replace in the value, was it none? And instead of now none, I will replace the value to droid. Going now to the people, to the last table, now you can see that I have a droid for BB8. So walking through the user interface on the sample query allows the changes to propagate into the function without knowing M or code, and now it can be translated to the aggregated results on each one of the pages. Now, finally, we just need to expand the column, remove the page number, change some type. So let's have, for the purpose of this example, you can see we have lots of unknown. We have some unknown characters. So the data was not complete. While there are great ways for the query editor to prepare the data, to change the data, for the sake of this demo, let's just ignore those unknown elements. So there are different ways how to do that, but for now, let's just convert the height to decimal number and convert the mass to decimal number. And you can see now that we have errors for all the unknown values because text cannot be converted into numbers. So we can just select these two columns, and in the home ribbon, we will remove the errors. Okay, so we have everything that we needed now to be able now to do some BMI. Okay, so for those of you who don't remember BMI is the body mass index. It allows us to compute a new number that takes into account both the mass and the height of the characters. Now imagine, and let me show it to you in the prepared demo that I have. Imagine that you have this is our spaceship, and we need to put all the Star Wars characters based on height or mass or all kinds of different attributes. So in this case, BMI perhaps is a very good element to compute, to get to know better, to take the combination of the height and mass. Another example why BMI will be very useful for us. So let me just show you very quickly. So imagine now that you have a table of the Star Wars characters, and this attribute can be also related to any business data that you may have. So imagine that you have a table with multiple numerical columns, and you want to allow the user to sort the entities by importance. Now, so you see now, I will also select. So I have the name, the Star Wars character name, and mass and height. So now, for one manager, perhaps the height is more important, so I can sort in descending order by the height. For some other report consumers, the mass is more important, so I can sort down by the mass, right? But a BMI is a perfect example of something that you take and you combine multiple columns together to be able to sort the importance by something that takes a combination of multiple columns. So even if BMI was not important in the report itself, having a BMI and then sort all the characters by the BMI will allow you to capture very well all the interesting combinations of mass and height based on perhaps some business priorities. Back to our report. So I try to give some business rationale why multiplying multiple columns, numerical columns, can be very helpful. In our case, the BMI calculation, this is the specific formula. So we need the mass in kilograms. And sorry, guys, I'm using the European metrics just because I come from outside of US. So for all my US fans, apologies for that. So we have the mass in kilograms and the height in meters. And we need to do a square height. So back to our query editor, you see that the mass is already in the right kilograms units, but the height is not. So I can go to the transform ribbon and transform the height into meters by dividing it by 100. And now all I need to do is to create the BMI. We will create it as a new column. So we go to the add column, clicking on custom column. And I'm calling this one BMI1 because we will show you 2 more ways to do BMI. And now we have the mass, and we divide the mass by square height. Square height, there are several ways to do that. If you will try, it's not like Excel formulas or DAX. This one will not work because M doesn't recognize the power sign. So for that, instead, we can either do it this way. Okay, so we have the height in this specific formula. Okay, another way to do that instead is to go, and we can now do that in the formula or as part of the settings. Another way to do that is to use the number family of functions. So we have number.power, and we can provide the column and power by 2. And this is probably more professional way to do things because we access height only once, and we have the BMI. Let's change it to a decimal number, then we can load the data to the report. Okay. Wait a second. You see, in this case, I forgot. There is no reason for me to load a single page of the 10 rows. I just need all the peoples. So to do that, I can go back to the query editor and unload the single page. I'm disabling the enable load. And I also don't need the people count. So I'm disabling this one as well. Now I can load again the report. And I have the people with the BMI. So just as an example, let's see that it works. Let's take a tree map. We will put the names in the group and the BMI as values. And you see, these are all the BMI values that we have by characters. So just something that I really like to mention each time that I do these demos is to show you Yoda, which is not a very long guy, is number 3 in top BMI values, which means that you may need to practice a bit more. And it's an interesting way to show the results. So now, just very quickly, let's show 2 different ways to do the BMI. The first one is to create a calculated column, and this is very easy. You see, this is our table. I can go to the modeling, create a new column, and call it BMI2. And the same type of calculation, row level calculations that are needed here. So we have the height. We start with the mass. And we can divide that with the height and use the power of 2. Okay, and it works. If you are a DAX practitioner, you may want, and you are used to also to use divide instead of the regular division, because this returns blank values whenever you have height, which is more effective in many visualization. But you see, everything is as expected. Now there is also another way to do it as a measure instead. Let me just show it to you. So just to prove you that it works, let's just put the name and the BMI, the first BMI and the second BMI in a table. So you'll see that all the numbers are computed correctly. The last way to do that is using a measure. Now, the reason why you may want to use a measure instead of a calculated column or a custom column is especially if you have very long tables with, let's say, 100 different columns. And each time that you create another custom column or calculated column, this specific approach, while it is very easy to implement, it just bloat your memory. The size of the file is too high. You will reach the 1 GB limitation much sooner than if you will use the measure approach. Okay, so usually if you want to be more efficient with the size of your models, you would prefer to, as much as possible, having a measure instead of calculated or custom columns. So I'm creating a new measure, and let's call this one BMI3. And now, of course, since this should be a row level calculation, right? There is no sense in summing up the mass of multiple characters and then the sum of the different heights. So for that, we need to use a kind of an aggregation method that will iterate over each of the characters. So I'm using average X in this case, and I will provide all the values of the people. So now each one of the characters in the people table will be computed by the expression that we are now going to write. And that expression is the similar code that we used for the calculated column. So all we need now is just go to people and take the mass and divide that with people height square, and everything should work. Let's drag and drop BMI3, and you see that we have the exact results. Any questions?
That would be where I unmute. Actually, there hasn't been a lot of questions. People have been going out and praising or singing your praise. Not exactly related to this. Somebody was asking about running DAX on direct queries. Do you have any guidance for people wanting to do that? It's like I said, it's not related. So if you wanted to table that, that would be fine.
Yeah, there are great materials about DAX and direct query. I know that Casper de Jong published some great material around this topic. Specifically, at least in my opinion, the fact that you have limitations with direct query and DAX and also with query editors, lots of calculations in the query editor are relatively limited with what you can achieve.
That's right.
I never go with direct query unless this is a very, very critical requirement from the client. And usually there are many opportunities to explore the import flow and the data model instead of the direct query, even if the client insists. There are many opportunities and things that will just make the solution much more agile. So why to go through this approach if it's not really critical? And so that's.
So go ahead and keep that logic on the back end is what you're saying. I went ahead and included that article in the chat window for, I think it was, who was it was asking this? I think it was Vivek that was asking this. So that I posted a couple different links for you. Other than that, I think I've been answering most of those questions. So continue on if you've got more. Otherwise,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, now I see also that we will not be able to show all the different pieces now in real life demo. So let me quickly switch to the next one on the prepared data set that I shared with you. Okay, so you see in this specific example, after we computed the BMI in different ways, this specific example show you how we can use also what-if scenarios. Specifically, what we did here is to use the modeling feature what if, clicking here on the new parameter, and I defined here a factor that looks after you finish the dialogue like that, like this one. Let me show it to you. So here you see I have a droid factor. This code was generated when I used the what if dialogue, and I just have numbers from 0.1 to 1. So now the idea is that I'm saying, droids are made of metal, right? So it's not fair for them to be measured in a BMI the same way as human beings and other species. So specifically, once you create the what if table, you also get from the Power BI functionality an automated measure. In this case, it is called parameter value, and it just returns the value that is here on the slicer. Now, what you can do is to use DAX. In this case, I wrote a measure called Galactic BMI that goes over each one of the species. In the demo that I showed you today, you can just go over all the genders. And now, based on each one of these types, if based on the values, you see if I get droid, then I would like to use another measure to calculate the BMI. In this case, this is droid BMI. Otherwise, let's say for Jabba the Hutt, I just want to have another specific calculation. And for the rest of the characters, I will use BMI measure, the same measure that we used, that we just show you in the previous exercise. Now, so just to show you what is the droid BMI. The droid BMI just get the BMI measure that we created in DAX, and we just multiply the selected value here on the factor. So just to show you, when I will change, when I'm changing the values here, and let's just select the droid for a second, the droid, and let's take human. Where do we have the humans here? Here. So you can see when I change the factor, the droid is completely different calculation, because of the what-if scenario. Okay, and if I clean this factor, all the factors are selected. I can show you in a visual by dragging and dropping the factor, all the different factors into the legend. You can see all the different what-if scenarios laid out in a single visual. So now you can make the decisions which one of the parameters you would like perhaps to use based on different species or gender. Finally, the last element that I wanted to show you is a Cartesian product. So it will take me 5 minutes to do that. Chuck, can I have 5 more minutes to show it very quickly, or?
5 minutes, yeah. We do need to finish before the hour, otherwise YouTube eliminates me from doing any editing. So yeah, we need to be finished on the top of the hour.
Sure. So any question at this stage, perhaps, that you prefer me to answer? Anyone?
What was the question? Sorry, was it directed towards me? I was looking at one of the questions.
No, I was just asking if there is any specific question. Anyone?
No, we're all good on the questions in the chat window.
Great. So let's show you very quickly something around Cartesian product. So in this case, you can see we have more supplementary data about BMI, including the specific BMI categories that can help us really to understand better the distribution of the population, not just by the number themselves, but with some more information around when BMI is good, where BMI is not very good. Okay, so to be able to mesh up this type of data into your data set, what we actually needed is to go again to the body mass page, and you can see that we have here the different ranges from 2 of the BMIs with the specific categories for the BMIs, which can help us to understand what is the range for normal when you are underweight or overweight. So for the Star Wars characters, now we can better classify them to those specific areas. So to be able to mesh up this data in the current data set, let me show you how we can do that. So I'm going back to the demo, and I'm clicking on the edit queries, and we will do it very quickly. And you can also see the results in the solution itself. So I'm going to the new source and select web. And here I will just paste the Wikipedia page. Okay, so now this is a very straightforward web import scenario that you may be familiar with. And you can see we have in the Wikipedia page multiple tables. Lucky enough, the first table is what we need. So I will just select the first table and click OK. And now we have this table. We don't need the first 2 rows. So let me remove the first 2 rows. And we have a category, the first BMI, the last BMI, the ranges, and we can remove the last 2 columns. Let's also, for simplicity of the demo, remove the null, replace null with 0. And again, just for the simplicity of the logic, I will replace the null for the max, because there is only one character with high BMI, and it is below 1,000. So 1,000 will be sufficient here. So we have these specific values. Now let's change the name to categories, and we'll go back to people. And this is where the Cartesian product is really helpful. It allows us to combine between the permutations of the rows of each table. So we have the people, and we want to combine all the different categories and then to apply the filter. So just to show you, I'm going to add column, create custom column, and here I will just write categories. Okay. Now, these are just the same copy of the same table with all the categories, and the Cartesian product happens now. This is the Cartesian product, right? Now I have lots of combination, but I only want the combination of the rows where the BMI is in the range between from and to. So what we can do is just select the filter, number filters, here, between, and there is no option in the user interface. So for now, I'm just writing some values. And now inside the M, in the formula bar, I will change this one to from, and this one to to. Okay, we can also remove the sign here. And I forgot also to change the types of from to decimal number. Let's do that quickly. We have 10 seconds to finish the demo, and you will see how it works. So now we have, after the filter, because of this specific manipulation, again, we have only a single person with a specific range that is important for us. And I can remove the from and to. And we have the category correctly. Loading this report, and now with this information, you have the category value on each one of the persons. And you can also see in the demo solution that I provided, you can see, it allows you to see the legend, the categories in the legend. So in yellow, these are the normal Star Wars characters. But for example, the one that are extremely class 3 obese, sorry for that, just a second. The class 3 obese, when I'm selecting this one, you can see that this person, Dude Bolt, is class C obese. Actually, there is also, of course, Jabba the Hutt in this case. Okay, so now we can go drill down on specific category because we were able, using Cartesian product, to enrich our table with the categories themselves. And by that, we concluded the demo.
Thank you very much, Gil. I don't think people realize just how important this is. In my day-to-day job, I use these techniques that you just walked through more than anything else because I work against Lithium, user voice, Google Analytics, and to be constrained to what a lot of the pre-canned connectors limit you to isn't going to work for me. So again, all of these techniques that you showed are probably the most core to my job. So take it for what it's worth. I'm not saying that I am a prototypical BI person, but literally the first week on the job, I was doing this stuff. I learned the M window more than I actually learned any of the rest of the product. So Gil, I really, really want to thank you. I wanted to thank the 200 plus people that joined. There were a bunch of questions, but I think I actually answered most of those in situ. One last question, since we've got 2 minutes left, was people were saying that they loved the February update with the global slicers, but they experienced some gotchas with the fonts and some gotchas with the SQL dumper. Gil, what's the answer? You ran into this as well.
The answer is that you are working on a fix.
Or actually you have fixes. So you actually got the fix today or yesterday for one of the issues you've got. I think all of the SQL dumper issues, I think we've already got fixed. So even if you've got the February update, download it again, make sure you have the absolute latest one. Because again, we've actually updated it a couple times. I won't actually go into the numbers. There's no reason to shame the team. So with that, Gil, thank you very, very much. I'm looking forward to actually seeing, oh, you're not going to be here. I'm going to miss you in a couple of weeks. So I'll see you next time I get to Chicago, my friend.
Great. Thank you. And thank you everyone for attending the session.
All right. Thank you.